Right, so this is how to put a new zip in a pair of jeans. So I'm going to show you where you need to undo. So the first thing to do is undo the little bar tack that you often get on the top stitching, along the top stitching. That joins the two sections of the fly together, and the next line of undoing is down the inside, just down there, so that you want to free up this zip. Then on this side you've often got two lines of stitching which hold the tape to this back fly section on the left hand side of the jean. Another place is to just undo the tiniest bit of the top stitching on the waistband, so that we can get inside almost just a finger width's worth and cut, because we're going to cut the zip away. So just there, and then the same sort of just there as well. You'll often find that it's perhaps got a row of reinforcing top stitching as well, so it's sort of easy to find. So I've done this already. This is one I prepared earlier. I've done this already on this pair of jeans. So let me get rid of the final bit of that. Just not wanting to come out. So the bar tack's gone. That line of stitching has gone also. So again, just get rid of your loose threads. So you can see that the zip is completely free. And I've undone a tiny bit of the waistband top stitching so that we can get that out there. Then on this side, done those two rows of stitching that hold the zip tape in place, and again just a bit that's come straight out, that's good, that holds it in there. Next thing to do is we're going to very carefully cut it out of the jeans. So if you have a look just here, we've got the top stitching on the fly. Now I want to try and save that. We don't want to lose that stitching. So on the inside we're going to cut the zip just before that stitching, so that we don't interfere or undo that stitching line. Okay, so that's on the fly side, so it's fallen out the top, we've cut it off the bottom. Then on this side we want to try and get our scissors and try and cut that zip tape. Oh, actually, if you're really lucky, that's pulled out again. Pull it out of the waistband. Okay, so that's pulled out there. And then you want to fold back what you've undone and try and cut the zip again as close to the stitching as possible. What it's got just there, it's got quite a big bar tack at the bottom. It's always a good idea to try and keep that. So we're going to try and snip it off at the bottom there. Okay, so we've got the zip that's failed, and can you see it's been hacked about quite a lot. So the next thing we need to do is replicate where we've cut it with the new zip. And also what you can see is the zip I've got here is a different length. So again, I'm just going to show you what you can do to just make it the right length. So I'm just going to do it by hand because your jean zipper are often metal. It's just best to keep them away from your sewing machine needles. It would just literally shatter a needle and it can be quite dangerous. So I'm just going to mark the correct length of this zip and do a few stitches over at the end. Just to create a little stopper, and then I'm going to very carefully trim the rest of it off. Right. Okay, so the top two sections can stay as they are. They're the right size. I just trim a tiny bit off just so that I can be sure they're going to disappear into the waistband. Then at the bottom, just here, the one on the right is quite short and the one on the left we can have that a bit longer. Then it's usually a good idea to get your paper scissors or scissors that don't really matter to try and get yourself through the teeth. So if you just go at an angle and try and just get your scissors between the teeth. These are just some old paper scissors. So that now, you can see, is the same size and shape as the one we've just taken out. So that goes over there. And we start to pin it back in. So open the zip, push it into the waistband. Another thing you can do is you can take photos before you take the old zip out so that you've got the exact position of the zip. So I'm just going to put some pins in to hold it in place. Got a feeling that was probably a bit further down. And the other thing you can do, if you're not too tidy about undoing your stitching, you can see where the stitching lining is because you've perhaps got the old threads still there. Often with jeans you'll have a shadow where the dye's penetrated to show you where the stitching line is. So pins all the way down. I'm putting my pins in so they're facing upwards so that I can take them out as I sew up to them. So I find it easier to start on this side. So just have a look on the back where your stitching line is. Make sure you're happy that it's all lining up. The stitching lines seem to be on that overlocking line, so I'm just going to just double check that it's all in line. Okay, so that seems fairly lined up. So I'm going to go on to So we've got the machine threaded up with a complementary colour of threads. I've got my zip foot on, and with mine being a chunky one, I'm going to move my needle all the way to the left. So we're just going to leave the waistband where it is and just start sewing to hold the zip tape in place. So you could use a denim needle if you've got particularly heavy denim, but just normal Gutterman's standard polyester thread is absolutely fine at this stage. So when you get to the bottom, just finish it off. So that's one side in. Next you want to do the zip up and close the button. And on the wrong side, start to put some pins in the zip tape. Just to hold it in place. Make sure you're happy with how it's sitting, it's not pulling it out of line, everything's still lined up. Okay, so we can undo it again now and concentrate on this side. So we poke it into the waistband again. Make sure it's nice and straight. I think that needs to come over just a touch. So this is where the difference occurs. We're going to do just one line of stitching down here, and what you'll notice, it will come through on the front of the trouser. So the bobbin thread needs to be in a colour that will blend into the denim on this side. So you can get the melange or marl thread from Gutterman's, which is different coloured denims. I find that sticks out a bit too much. Usually just a plain navy on blue denim will just blend into the other fibres. I'm going to use black with this because they're grey jeans. So we'll see how, because it's going to be visible, it's going to be an extra line of stitching down there which wasn't there originally. Usually when jeans are made, this zip is just sewn to the single layer of the fly. So it's just going to be a bit different. So again, pop it in here, and I just do one line of stitching just down the centre of the zip tape to hold it in place. To the end. There, so on that side you can barely see it really. Yeah, quite happy with that. Then the last thing to do is to replace the top stitching in the waistband sections, and to just complete the bar tack just there. So I'll just show you how to do that. What you can do for top stitching, now this is a strange beige colour, so I'm just threading up another thread on top, so that I've got double thickness, because you won't necessarily have, it just saves you going and buying a special top stitch thread for a few centimetres of stitching. So I've got 2 threads there, and I've got my black underneath. For this side I'm going to leave the zip foot on because I don't want to come into contact with that button. So I'll start on this side. And as you're going across, just be very careful not to sew over the metal sections of the zip, because you'll break your needle as well. You can use your bulky seam aid to get over this section. I think I'll put it in straight away. So I've put my needle in. I'm going to put my bulky seam aid just to support the foot as I'm sewing along here. And you might want to make the stitch length a bit longer as well, usually if you're top stitching using stitch length 3. So that's that bit done, and then the other side I'll swap back to a normal foot. Put my needle in the middle again, so we can do this bit here. The stitching seems to have saved itself on that side, but we do need to do some stitching just to close up that section there. So I'm going to just go over it between there and the end. So again, just need a bit of the bulky seam aid again just to help us, because we've got all this extra thickness here. There, that's okay. That's worked nicely. Then, last but not least, I mean, as you can see there, it just seems to have not managed to unpick the original. Just seems to be, here we go. The original bar tack. There, it's come out now. And then what you need to do is close your zip, and then make sure that the 2 sections of the fly are together, just there, and then you're going to sew through all 4 layers and do a little bar tack. So bar tack is very, very small, short, very close satin stitch, or a bit like a buttonhole stitch. So your machine might have a setting for it, which mine has, which is 34. But if it doesn't, you'd have perhaps the width at around 1.5, 1 or 1.5 or 2. You'd perhaps practice on a bit of scrap before you did this, and you'd have the stitch length at about 1/2 or 1/4, so that you've got a nice satin stitch. And you want a little bar tack just to replicate what you've undone, so it's probably only 1 centimetre long. There, so just sort of replicated the little bar tack. So because I've locked off all the knots on these stitching lines, I can just trim all the ends off and then show you the final zip. There. So it's fairly invisible, we can't really see the black stitching line down there, and just saved another pair of jeans.